And we begin in South Africa, where President Jacob Zuma has suspended the National Police Commissioner Riah Phiyega pending an inquiry into allegations of misconduct. President Zuma's office had in September launched an investigation into the police chief's role in the 2012 killing of 34 miners by officers during a violent wildcat strike over pay at the Marikana mine. A three-member board will also look into whether the police boss and other senior police officers had concealed information on decisions they took while handling labor unrest at Lonmin's operations. And for that, we now cross over to CCTV's Angelo Coppola. He's joining me live from Johannesburg for more on this story. Angelo, it appears like the police chief could be culpable with regards to the Marikana massacre. What is the significance, though, of her suspension at this point?
Well, look, let's not judge anything or make any sort of determinations until this Board of Inquiry has actually made a ruling or a recommendation. The lawyer representing the injured and arrested miners says that the suspension is long overdue. Meanwhile, the CERI, the group that are looking after the interests of the 36 families of the deceased miners, hasn't commented yet. But analysts have been saying that the commissioner should step aside anyway to allow her to focus whether there was going to be this inquiry or not on her defense. And the defense is now her focus point, because within about 15 minutes of the announcement coming out, the presidency also announced the appointment of an acting commissioner, which is going to allow the SAPS now to focus on their crime prevention duties and allow Phiyega to actually focus on her defense and what's going to happen. So it's still early days, and let's see how this one plays out.
Well, the police chief is now suspended, though, but what happens next then? How will the three-member inquiry board proceed from here on?
Well, this is where all the admin starts now, because essentially the president has made the formal announcement. The judge and these two assessors have probably known in advance that this was going to happen, so they could probably have had a couple of informal meetings, but they now need to put the rules in place. They need to actually establish the parameters of the inquiry, where it's going to be held. They're going to have to rent offices, they're going to have to get telephone lines, they're going to have to get a whole admin team around them, and then more importantly, Phiyega has to get legal representation, which of course, because she's still employed by the state, will be paid for by the state. So she's not going to shirk in terms of finding the right kind of legal representation. So we don't see anything happening in terms of the first day of the inquiry for at least a couple of months now, because there's a lot of background work that has to happen in the meantime, bearing in mind that those parameters have to be agreed to and the deadlines have to be set by the commission or the Board of Inquiry and the presidency, and then and only then will we start seeing any kind of movement. There's going to be lots of legal wrangling here, so we're looking at least a couple of months before we see any kind of action.
All right, Angelo Coppola for us there in Johannesburg.